The Witcher 3 wasn't just a game for most of us, yes. Remember the first time we walked through the dark roads of Velen, felt the wind of Skellige, took a monster contract from a village, and truly felt like we were part of that world. Unforgettable, right? But now let's be honest. As The Witcher 4 gets closer, we all have the same question in our minds. Can this world carry the same weight without Geralt? Can Ciri truly carry this new era? Or will it become one of the most controversial games in Witcher history? This isn't just a question I'm asking. For a long time, under my Witcher 4 videos, and even under other game videos in this 5 critical changes players want series, I've been seeing the same request from you. Make this video for Witcher 4 too. So today, that's exactly what we're doing. We'll go through the 5 critical changes that players and you in the comments have been talking about the most. Changes that could define the fate of this new Witcher era. If you're ready, let's break them down one by one. Number 1, Ciri should feel like her own character, not Geralt 2. The thing players talk about the most when it comes to The Witcher 4 is definitely how Ciri is going to feel, because Ciri being the main character is already a massive change on its own. But the real issue here isn't just Geralt is gone, Ciri is here. Players want Ciri to truly have her own gameplay style, her own pace, and her own character weight. Geralt was heavier, more controlled, more experienced, and had that classic Witcher discipline. Ciri carries a completely different energy. She is faster, more instinctive, younger, and her past is far more chaotic. That's why the combat system should feel different in the same way. Ciri shouldn't just be another Witcher swinging a sword. She should be a character who changes position instantly, attacks quickly, moves around enemies, and when needed, makes her elder blood side felt through gameplay. For example, players want to see that Blink-style fast movement feeling in Ciri's actions. Compared to Geralt's heavier and more methodical combat, fights could have a more fluid, more agile structure, and maybe even use vertical space more. Ciri could suddenly move behind an enemy, reposition herself in crowded fights, or use her power in certain special moments to change the rhythm of the battlefield. That's when Ciri would truly feel not like a character placed in Geralt's role, but like a brand new main character on her own. In my opinion, the biggest mistake CD Projekt Red could make here would be taking the safe route and presenting Ciri as just a new character built on top of Geralt's systems. Because then players would naturally ask, why are we playing as Ciri instead of Geralt? But if Ciri's gameplay, story, and character language are built in a truly different way, this change could become not the biggest risk of the series, but its biggest strength. Number 2. The Elder Blood story must stay true to the lore. One of the most sensitive topics about Ciri is definitely the Elder Blood issue. Because Ciri is not an ordinary Witcher. In fact, that is the most important thing about her. Ciri's identity cannot be explained only by hunting monsters, using a sword, or receiving Witcher training. Behind her, there is a much bigger legacy, a much bigger power, and the Elder Blood story, which is one of the foundations of the Witcher universe. This is exactly where players' concerns begin. Will The Witcher 4 weaken Ciri's unique side in order to turn her into a more classic Witcher character? Or will the Elder Blood power be pushed into the background just for gameplay balance? Because Ciri's power is not that she is like Geralt. Her power is that she carries a completely different destiny from Geralt. That is why players want Ciri's story to stay true to the lore. If Ciri is hunting monsters, there needs to be a strong story reason for it. If her powers have changed, there needs to be a clear explanation for that too. If she is behaving like a Witcher, it needs to be told without breaking the rules of the universe. Because giving Ciri random mutations and turning her into an ordinary Witcher would not feel like a small story choice to players. It would be seen as a decision that damages the core identity of the Witcher universe. I think this point could directly affect whether the game is accepted or not, because the Witcher audience is very sensitive when it comes to lore. These players don't just want beautiful graphics, a good combat system, or a big map. They want respect for the rules, history, and character identities of this world. If CD Projekt Red builds Ciri's Elder Blood story correctly, players will connect to this new era much more easily. But if the lore is handled incorrectly, the controversy could become even bigger than the game itself. Number 3. Choices should truly shape the story. One of the strongest parts of the Witcher series has always been its choices. Because in these games, decisions were often not just simple, good or bad options. Sometimes the thing we thought was right led to terrible consequences. And sometimes a morally difficult choice created a more humane outcome in the long run. What players expect from The Witcher 4 is exactly the return of that feeling. But there is an important balance here. Players are not just saying every choice should have consequences. They also want those consequences to feel natural, meaningful, and tied to the story. In other words, a dialogue option should not just change 2 lines. It should genuinely affect how characters see us, how quests progress, the fate of certain regions, and Ciri's direction within the story. For example, when we save a village, that village should remember it. When we betray a character, it shouldn't end only in that scene. If we choose to solve the curse behind a monster instead of killing it, the world should react differently to that. In fact, in some quests, there shouldn't be a right answer at all. When the player makes a decision, they should feel both the advantage and the cost of that choice. I think The Witcher 4 has a huge opportunity here, because Ciri's story is already strong enough to be built around destiny, free will, and identity. If the choice system is truly connected to these themes, players won't just complete quests, they will create their own version of Ciri. And that would turn the game from a one-time adventure into a much more personal and much more unforgettable RPG experience. Number 4. The world should feel more diverse, not just bigger. Players no longer want just a big open world. We have seen this in many games in recent years. The map can be massive. There can be a lot of places to visit, but if there is no variety, story, or real atmosphere inside that world, the feeling of exploration disappears after a while. For The Witcher 4, the expectation is not just a bigger map, but a more diverse and more alive world. That was also one of the most beloved parts of The Witcher 3. Even when we entered a small village, there could be a secret, a tragedy, a curse, or an unexpected character story waiting there. Players want that same feeling in The Witcher 4. Every NPC should not feel the same. Every town should not have the same structure. Every region should not feel like just an area with a different color palette, but like a real place with its own culture, fears, and stories. For example, in one region, people might fear creatures, while in another region, political pressure could be more central. In one place, ancient magic and curses could define the atmosphere, while somewhere else, the destruction after war could be felt. When we talk to an NPC, we don't just want to receive a quest, we want to see a part of the world that person lives in. Because in the Witcher universe, even the smallest character can sometimes open the door to a much bigger story. If The Witcher 4's world is built this way, I think players will not see the map as just a list of icons to clear. They will travel with genuine curiosity about what will I find here, and that is very important. Because in the Witcher world, the open world is not just a background. The open world is the story itself. If every region is filled with a different spirit and different small stories, players will want to stay in that world for hours. Number 5. Monster hunting should feel dangerous again. One of the most important things that comes to mind when you say The Witcher is monster hunting. But what players want from The Witcher 4 is not just seeing more creatures. They want monster hunting to once again feel like an atmospheric, genuinely dangerous experience that requires preparation and investigation. Because a good Witcher contract should not just be go there, kill the monster, get your reward. First, we should track clues. We should examine bodies. We should gather information from villagers. We should read the bestiary to learn the creature's weaknesses. We should actually think about which oil, which bomb, and which sign will work. This is exactly what players want, to feel like a Witcher even before the hunt begins. For example, some creatures could be more dangerous at certain times of day. Some could gain an advantage in rain or swamps. Defeating some of them might require not just being strong, but preparing properly. In fact, in some contract quests, killing the creature should not be the only solution. Maybe we need to find the source of the curse first, or maybe we need to understand that the creature is actually the result of a tragedy. I think if this system is done correctly, it could become one of the strongest parts of The Witcher 4, because hunting monsters as Ciri can feel different from Geralt, while still preserving the Witcher spirit. What players want is a monster hunting experience that is more cinematic, more diverse, more dangerous, and where every hunt has its own story. If CD Projekt Red can achieve that, The Witcher 4 will not just be a beautiful-looking RPG, but a game that truly feels like The Witcher. So among these 5 critical changes we talked about today, which one is the most important to you? What do you think absolutely needs to be in The Witcher 4? Or, is there another detail I didn't mention that you think would make the game feel incomplete if it's missing? Make sure to write all your thoughts in the comments, because honestly, many of the topics in this video already came from your comments, your discussions, and the conversations happening in the Witcher community for a long time. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any updates about The Witcher 4. I'll see you in the next video, and take care.